Welcome to Cultural Fluency Makers. I'm your host, David Wellish. Each week, we welcome leaders to share how they stay ahead of the ever-changing consumer landscape. With today's cultural transformation, top brands need to understand diverse consumer segments from Gen Z, Hispanic, and LGBTQ+ to gamers, wine enthusiasts, and basketball fanatics in Iowa. Their marketing strategies require them to keep the pulse on their consumers, but also their brand in the category to continue to grow revenue for the long term. Cultural Fluency Makers is sponsored by Collage Group, the only cultural intelligence engine that provides brand and consumer insights on the why that drives consumer behavior and purchase decisions. Let's get started. I am so excited for this episode and very much look forward to a dynamic and insightful dialogue. With me today, a senior insights and brand leader with a proven track record of driving impactful business outcomes. He has worked with multinational organizations with a heavy concentration of business partners and projects in Western Europe, enriching his ability to deliver tailored business strategies. His goal is to continuously forge new avenues for brands to thrive by harnessing superior marketing, market insights, and fostering sustainable growth opportunities. He's now the Director of Consumer Insights at Compari America. John Mutterperl, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to learn from you today.
Thank you so much, David. A pleasure to be here, and thank you for the very kind introduction.
All right, let's get started. John, given America's rapidly changing demographic and cultural landscape, what role does inclusive marketing play in your overall marketing strategy and insights? What has changed and how do you see it evolving?
Yeah, several questions within there, and some big opportunities for us. I think first and foremost, when we think about inclusive marketing at Campari, we look at it through the dual prong lens of it being a business imperative and a moral imperative. A moral imperative because that's who we are, that's what we want to do. We want to welcome all people to our business and brands. The business imperative, when you think about and appreciate that today, America, the United States, is roughly uh, 42% multicultural. About 155 million Americans identify as having a multicultural or a polycultural background. When you consider that's an enormous amount of people, that audience equals or actually exceeds the UK and Germany combined, right? So you think about the world's largest economies. That multicultural or polycultural audience in the US has buying power of $5.2 trillion plus and is growing at a rate which far exceeds that of the general market or the what we would historically or traditionally call the general market. So we like to say, woe to the marketer who chooses either to ignore this opportunity and or to not get it right. So big opportunity out there, a very fast growing opportunity. And we know that these multicultural consumers that they grab onto and they appreciate businesses and brands which look to connect with them in meaningful, authentic, and relevant ways. And that those last two parts, the authentic and the relevant pieces, are probably the most important ones.
Thank you, John. Very, very well said. It seems like clearly you've identified the opportunity from a financial perspective, from a size perspective.
Yeah.
Um, has that followed, from a either organizational or from a marketing strategy and tactic standpoint?
Yeah, I'd say it has. I mean, if we were to, I've been with Compari about 4.5 years now, and I'd say, yes, there were efforts of multicultural marketing far preceding me. I'd say it really started to gain momentum in the last sort of 4, 5 years, as with many other organizations. Um, I think how it's changed is that there's a much more concerted and focused effort behind it. And it's to do it right, it's not only a question of one specific brand manager or brand team saying, hi, we'd like to have a multicultural or an audience specific program or outreach effort. It really, to do it well, it really should involve the whole organization from the top to the bottom, or from the bottom up. And I think what's changed is sort of this focus and orientation. If I was to think back when I first began, well, earlier in my career, when inclusive marketing was really getting going in the US for real, sort of 20, 25 years ago, it was very much considered as an add-on. You had your general market approach, and then you had your multicultural bolt-on, whether that was Asian, Hispanic, Black, or some other LGBTQIA, some other audience. Today, one can unequivocally say that multicultural marketing is marketing very much because of the fact of who we are as a people. And if you're not baking that into your marketing efforts, you're really not doing marketing, or you may be doing marketing, but to the detriment of, as I said, sort of 42% of your business is multicultural.
And Jonah, I remember as you were telling the story, I remember those times 25 years ago when I was in that sort of, call it, the more specific efforts that
Yeah.
were above and beyond or outside the core. And yes, the world has changed, and the population dynamics have changed in a direction that I think supports all of what you're saying. So before going in, maybe stepping out, how important do you think, and stepping out to just marketing and consumer organizations in general, how do you think it is for consumer brands to get this right? How important is it, do you think, for growth?
I think it's so the getting it right piece is everything. Details and nuance matter, and they matter a lot, because if a brand or a business um, engages with an audience in a way that is not culturally sensitive, they can either miss the mark for sort of the hook, engaging an audience, or worse, they can actually offend, turn off, and alienate an audience. Much easier to pull people in the first time than try and bring them back the second time if you've offended them in some way. Stuff can go viral, and we've all seen examples. We know examples of that across the consumer brandscape the last several years. So yeah, you don't want to make a misstep in that area.
So it seems, John, that what you're saying is it is important. The size is big. Um, it's not simple. What's hard? What are the key challenges here? And I heard you talk about from top to bottom, that it's not just like one initiative. It's definitely not being present for Hispanic Heritage Month and that's it. Like what's hard?
I think two things are hard. One is sort of structural or organizationally based, and I'll speak to that first. The idea, as I was mentioning, that it's not, or to succeed, it's not only a specific brand program or a brand or a marketing team saying, hey, we have a specific communication or we have an activation. For brands or a business to be perceived in a credible way by any multicultural audience, and I don't doesn't matter what that audience is, it really should be the outreach should live within an ecosystem of that organization, meaning not just marketing, but it should involve sales, it should involve communication, finance, production. The business, the look of the business should reflect the communities and the consumers that business or brand are trying to serve, ultimately to work the best. As an example, in our business, in the spirits industry, we marketers, yes, we come up with programs at our HQ in New York, but those filter through our salespeople. They filter through the salespeople and the activation specialist of our distributor partner. Those people, both one should understand the audience we're looking to engage with, but even more so, physically, they should reflect the audiences that we're looking to connect with. So it shouldn't be just that general market, white marketers, white salespeople are speaking with Asian, Latino, Black, but it should be sort of this idea of a rainbow, of a mosaic of peoples within our organization trying to connect with the plurality of the market of the U.S. So that's one about challenge. I'd say the other area for challenge, it's probably, as I was mentioning before, around this idea of one nuance, sort of subtleties, whether it's how you pronounce a certain word or spell a certain word, or just cultural sensitivities overall. The other thing too is understanding that any particular multicultural audience that we're trying to engage with, they're not monolithic. To say that all Hispanics are the same is not true. People tend to identify based on their country of origin. So being sensitive to what's going to be motivating, compelling, appreciated by Mexican Americans versus or Mexican Hispanic Americans from Mexico, or Hispanic Americans from Puerto Rico or Dominican Republic, there are sensitivities there, and we have to be aware of those. We should be aware of those.
So it sounds complex.
For sure.
It's not, it's not. Yeah, it sounds complex. It's right. It's not simple to get right, but the price, the opportunity is there that merits going after the complexity.
That's exactly right, and I think that complexity, a good analogy would be a bit like a Rubik's cube. So you spin the face of the cube, and it's sort of identifying the right message with the right audience in the right context, the right social occasion, the right need, and all those pieces have to come together in a symbiotic and sort of fluid kind of way. And if any one piece is off, you might have the right message, but you're saying it at a moment when that particular audience really doesn't celebrate or come together. I'm thinking about the world of spirits and the different occasions when consumers would enjoy our products. The message will either fall flat, or again, that audience can say, you know what, they don't really understand me. They don't understand our people. This brand's not for me.
Not for me. And so you spoke about two ingredients behind this complexity. First, this organizational piece. Gosh, who owns it, right? Like if you, coordinating against sales and marketing and finance and production and distribution, is there an owner to this, or how does an organization align across all of these departments from an audience standpoint?
Yeah, I think it has to come through the desire, the will to be pluralistic or multicultural centric. It has to come from the top down. I think it has to be part of an organization's mission, if you will. It has to be baked in, and perhaps even baked into business objectives and outcomes, and tying outcomes to achieving certain benchmarks. Um, for the various stakeholders within the organization.
And it's interesting that you say that. What we have seen, we're in this privileged position
Hmm.
within Collage to be at the center of over 300 brands, and I would so agree with you, John, that maybe one of the biggest predictors of success in this space is this top-down
Yeah.
support. I mean, it really makes the world of difference.
Totally agree, because if there's that motivation and there's that expectation that all departments within an organization are marching or moving in the same direction, the expression, it takes an army. Well, that army can move things along. If it's only one small part of a team or one division which is misaligned with other divisions, it's much more difficult to move the ball in the business down the field.
And then the second component, you talked about cultural nuance, which is really insight.
For sure.
And I think what happens is, as America's diversity accelerates, I think there's a rising complexity to market to the American consumer, and therefore your function and your role, I think, becomes so critical. Insights really across everything, right, across generations. How is Gen Z changing the consumption of alcohol? And then within multicultural race and ethnicity, how is that different by segment, so that you're able to to resonate authentically with these segments?
I think you've hit the nail or the consumer on the head again, and I think that comes down to one, having great partners like the Collage Group that help us with foundational insights. I think two, it's about continually engaging with the audiences to keep a finger on the pulse for how an audience and how a culture is evolving. Um, at Compari, we've taken a three-pronged approach to this, and we use the acronym AIM: assess, identify, and meet. The assess piece is first leveraging data from the Collage Group to understanding how well our brands align with the different multicultural audiences or not. Two, the identify piece, from that data, then identifying sort of what is the low hanging or the immediate fruit for us. With inclusive marketing, it's very difficult to go from 0 to 100 all at once and be all things to all people. So you have to make strategic choices, one based on kind of the reality of people power and the ability to do outreach and engage, two based on just investment dollars, and it takes effort to get the message out there. So that identify piece, identifying what's sort of the most natural or organic fit for our brands with a specific audience. And then three, the M, the meet part of AIM, it's meeting the audience where they're at, showing up and messaging in authentic and culturally relevant ways. And knowing how to do that, that comes back to what you were talking about, the insights piece. Yes, it's doing research, but it's really putting ourselves into the shoes of those consumers, understanding their perspectives, their life experiences, what are their hopes, aspirations, dreams, desires, those sorts of things, and what they look for and expect from brands.
Fantastic. John, most I get to speak with many marketers with high frequency and insights leaders, and I would say that most marketers, when asked, would say that being culturally relevant or culturally fluent is essential to win consumers' hearts and minds today. When you hear that, can you define what culturally relevant means for you, and how do you become culturally fluent?
Yeah, I think for us, cultural fluency means that we show up, that we're part of consumers' sort of organic consideration set, that it's not, we don't have to hit them over the head to get them to think of us. If we were to ask a Hispanic consumer, Hispanic American consumer, hey, what brands of tequila come to mind? They would mention Espolon. A Black consumer, what brands of cognac do you think about? They would mention Courvoisier. They would mention Grand Marnier. So that's kind of the end, and that's the end result or the goal. The how we get there is really, as I was alluding to before, it's showing up in the moments and occasions that matter to our consumers. It's understanding how they socialize, what are their needs, what they look for in brands, what are our consumers' passion points. For sure, that's a big one. We know that consumers appreciate brands which seamlessly fit into and align with the moments and the passions that our consumers are most enthusiastic about. It's natural, whether you're a sports fan or a music fan or any kind of hobby you may have on the weekend. You appreciate brands which fit into those ecosystems. And so we want to understand what those are for our consumers. And we want to show up and resonate in those moments and occasions. But the key piece is doing it in a way which is natural and, quote, authentic to what our brands are, who they are, and what they're about. If a specific brand has no right to play or no credibility in a specific space, you have to be careful. You can't just jump up out of nowhere and say, hi, look at me, I'm here. You can do that, but then consumers will look at you and say, I'm not so sure about that. So it's sort of getting that balance point right between understanding what our consumers want and need and how much credibility do we currently play? What's our right to win? Yes, brands want to build business, and so they will proactively pursue new audiences, new opportunities. but there needs to be some caution and understanding in how a brand goes about doing it.
That's a great answer. So it's the intersection of, once again, consumer insight. You talk about passion points. You talk about understanding, consumers, so that you can be organic.
Correct.
Um, but it begins with the self awareness of your own brand, and understand how you can intersect.
I think
Uh,
that's very much right. It's introspective and external.
Now we know that budgets are not unlimited, right?
Right.
And, right, and in a world, where generating ROI, and let's call it incremental ROI, is so critical. How are you balancing these targeted communications and messaging that you're so eloquently describing, with more holistic campaigns that target the overall market? Like, how do you strike the balance? Are you able to get to that incremental ROI when you go narrow? How do you guys think about the world in that way?
Yeah, I think it's not about going super narrow. It's finding a meaty and sizable audience, developing programs, messaging, communications that speak to that audience. But it's more in terms of speaking to them with a wink and a nod that they will appreciate, but at the same time is not off-putting or alienating to a broader audience, right? Because if we were to say we only want to engage with X brand with Hispanic consumers, or only Y audience with Black consumers, and really double down on sort of a very small niche type of messaging, that's good. It will work to a certain degree, but it can be a bit self-limiting.
And do you find that when you think about those audiences, are they intersectional? I mean, is it a combination of race, ethnicity, generation, or is it more, you're going after the specific demographic or the specific ethnic group?
No, I think as you said, it's more intersectional, particularly in the world of spirits and thinking about the lifetime value of a consumer. Um,
Yeah.
we want to welcome all consumers to our brands for sure. We tend to focus our campaigns, our messaging generally on younger, thinking about bringing people into the franchise, while those who are already in the franchise, having them continue with us, but not specifically messaging to older audiences. We want the messaging that'll appeal to a that is targeted to a 25 to 30-year old, as an example. Some is more a bit older, 40 or 45. We want that messaging to speak directly to that consumer, but at the same time be appreciated, or at least not be off-putting to somebody a bit older. And when you mention intersectionality, yeah, it tends to be uh, multicultural audience relative to age, and in some cases even specific markets. It's not in the context of limited budgets. We can't speak to all Hispanics in every single market, all
Yeah.
ages across the entire country.
Great. Well said. Moving on, John, to the big B, backlash.
Yeah.
So, so backlash has been a top of mind topic for many marketers recently, and I guess the question is it top of mind for you and the management team, and how are marketing teams navigating it? Like, is it something that it just happened here and there, or is it really something to be aware of and be careful?
Yeah, I think in our highly fractured political and social and cultural landscape, businesses and brands should be careful. We certainly try to be. The goal is to be inclusive, welcome all consumers to our brands. At the same time, in doing that, we don't want to do or say anything that could alienate or offend someone. So, I think sort of the concept of do no harm certainly applies. As a general rule, we tend to stay out of taking a political stance or wading into the culture wars, for obvious reasons. It's not to say that a brand should not and does not have a point of view but we typically do not choose to proactively try and provoke, provoke aspects of the current landscape.
It seems like it's a very difficult balance
Yeah,
to strike,
for sure.
especially in a world where the younger generation wants brands to come in, and
Right.
be in the right
Yeah.
in the space, in the social space, and yet the response is pretty strong. Right? So it's a tough balance to
it's
strike.
it's very tricky. If there's a particular social issue, political issue that one of our brands has a specific history with, or needs to express a certain point of, potentially that could happen. But as a general rule, again, we choose not to uh, put a stake in the ground in ways that could offend or alienate specific audiences.
Great. John, any for the audience of marketers and insights leaders that are listening, any advice that you would offer for them as they're thinking about how to best cater to this sort of diverse America and how to navigate cultural America?
Be patient, be proactive, and be ready to play the long game. And by the long game, I mean that, as I've seen in my career across a number of companies, multicultural or inclusive marketing excellence does not happen overnight. A team or a business doesn't just wake up one morning and say, here we are, let's do it, and expect to see fantastic results right out of the gate. It takes time, it takes practice, it takes homing or honing. Um, yeah, it takes patience and commitment. So I'd say be energized, be enthusiastic, be committed, be a champion, and be a cheerleader. But be prepared and be motivated to pursue it on an ongoing basis. It's not sort of like a one and done thing where you create an advertisement and say, "That's it, we're done." It's a continuing process.
I like that a lot. John, that advice of being patient in a world where we all want instant gratification, and we are always looking for, the immediate ROI. It's important to play that long
I
game.
think so.
I completely agree with you. So this first section we learned from you, and now we're gonna learn a little bit more about you, and so we're gonna go a little more personal. So what are the things that inspire? What inspires you? What motivates you?
On a personal level, I think travel is probably a common theme. Sort of life is a journey. Yes, because of the variety of the wonder of the world, but also the different types of people and cultures you meet when you get out of your own backyard. And travel doesn't necessarily have to mean going across an ocean. Travel could be going to a different part of the state you live in, a different region of the country. Circling back to what we were talking about earlier in the conversation, the US is a big place. We're about 350 some odd million people, which 155 of us come from non general market, non white, from different places than sort of general market. And so you can go to different parts of the country and you can learn a tremendous amount. You can experience a tremendous amount. And I just find that personally fascinating, enriching, engaging, and invigorating.
I love that as somebody who grew up outside of the U.S. in Ecuador, and also came from European parents and spoke Spanish as first language, but then German at home. I completely follow what you're saying and the beauty of exploring the world. I love that.
Great.
And so let's go to this, um, for our young audiences. If you could travel back in time
Yeah.
and give your 20-year-old self advice, professional career, what would that be?
Boy, I think it would be embracing change more proactively. and being more open to the what if and sort of, you know, possibility. I think a while ago, as I was starting out, I think the world was a certain way, and there were certain career tracks and certain natural progressions, and you were expected to pursue different certain avenues. Whatever industry you were in my case, it's been consumer marketing. You're supposed to act a certain way and be with certain organizations. I think today, as culture has evolved, as our society has evolved, career paths have followed that track. And I think there's much more fluidity and much more opportunity to explore different things, try different avenues, try different jobs, work with different teams, different departments. And I think rather than being there being one specific way to get from I just graduated college, or maybe I didn't go to college. Maybe I'm starting my career right after high school, which a lot of people are doing now. To, hey, where do I want to be 30, 40 years from now? It's a much less scripted and proscripted path. So I think being open to change. The other thing I would say is I recall as I was graduating, the president of my college at the convocation said, I want to urge you to think about three things as you leave here today. That's see the world, be a player, and make a difference. I think those three things for me have kind of been my guiding light. I'd say for the most part, I've kept true to them. The one thing I would do perhaps a little bit differently is while pursuing those three things, allowing myself a little more space and grace and flexibility to, there are different ways to do things and different ways to achieve your goal.
John, you have just shared kernels of gold for a generation, that I think it's difficult to figure out exactly where to go, what to do, what to pursue, and then you've got AI that's
Yeah.
that's throwing a tsunami into all of this. I think what you just shared is it's really it is very wise.
Thank you.
Keep it flexible and keep it open. Well, and if people want to find you, John, where can they find you, or initiatives around the company?
Yeah, absolutely. Folks can find me on LinkedIn. I'm also happy to share my email. You can reach out to me there.
Fantastic. Well, John, thank you very much. We really appreciate your time and the candid way in which you've shared your wisdom gathered through so many years in a very successful trajectory.
Thank you so much for the conversation today. I really enjoyed it, and thank you and all the Collage team for your great partnership over the many years. We value it and appreciate it.
Thank you as well for the opportunity, and to our audience, thank you for listening. And if you learned something new today or laughed, tell someone about the podcast. Again, John, thank you so very much. This has been another exciting episode of Cultural Fluency Makers, and see you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of Cultural Fluency Makers. Thank you for joining us. Please share your comments and what you would like to hear more about. Be as specific as possible. For show notes and more, please visit culturalfluencymakers.com. This show is proudly sponsored by Collage Group, unleashing the power of cultural intelligence to fuel brand growth. Please follow Collage Group on LinkedIn, and we will see you next week.